Before we dive into Schopenhauer's hidden truth, we need to step back in time. To understand the weight of his ideas, we must walk through the world that shaped him, the world that gave birth to both his genius and his suffering. Because behind every philosophy lies a story, and behind every story lies a child standing in the shadows, trying to make sense of a world that never truly made space for him. Arthur Schopenhauer was born on February 22, 1788, in Danzig, what we know today as Gdańsk, Poland. But his life began not with comfort, nor with a warm welcome into an affectionate family, but with the cold precision of status, trade, and expectation. His father, Heinrich Floris Schopenhauer, was a wealthy merchant, practical, ambitious, stern. He valued commerce, not contemplation, money, not meaning, ships, not solitude. To him, the world was a place to be conquered, bargained with, and dominated. His mother, Johanna, was different, vibrant, charismatic, drawn to art, literature, and social gatherings. She would later become a novelist and run one of the most popular literary salons of her time. People admired her brilliance, her wit, her charm, but for young Arthur, this was not a house of warmth. It was a house of tension. His father's strictness and his mother's social ambitions left little room for tenderness. From the very beginning, Arthur felt like an outsider, even in his own family. Heinrich had one vision for his son: business, to carry on the family's commercial empire, to stand at the helm of ships loaded with goods, sailing across seas, making profit, securing legacy. But even as a boy, Arthur resisted. Numbers and trade didn't stir him. Instead, he gravitated toward books, questions, and long silences. He was curious about the unseen currents beneath life, the why behind existence. This was not what his father wanted. Conflict was inevitable. At the age of 9, Arthur was sent on a grand European tour, an educational journey designed to prepare him for a career in commerce. Imagine a child wandering through foreign cities, absorbing cultures, languages, art, history, and yet feeling all of it press against his sensitive soul. Where others saw opportunity, Arthur saw restlessness. Where others saw progress, he saw emptiness. His father's shadow loomed heavy. Heinrich was a man of dark moods, prone to depression. He expected discipline and obedience from Arthur, but beneath that sternness was a man fighting battles of his own. When Arthur was just 17, tragedy struck. His father died, likely by suicide, falling into the waters of a canal. The official reports framed it as an accident, but Arthur always suspected otherwise. For a boy already prone to melancholy, this event carved a scar that never healed. The image of life as fragile, painful, and fleeting, something that could end without warning, settled deep into his mind. After Heinrich's death, Johanna quickly built a new life for herself. She moved to Weimar and established a literary salon, hosting poets, writers, and intellectuals. She thrived. She enjoyed the admiration, the attention, the social sparkle. But Arthur felt abandoned. He longed for intimacy, but his mother gave him distance. He longed for understanding, but she offered him society. He longed for affection, but she dismissed him as brooding, difficult, even ungrateful. One of their most painful clashes happened when Arthur accused her of being cold. She replied bluntly, "You are unbearable. You will never be happy with anyone because you can't even be happy with yourself." That wound stayed with him forever. Arthur grew into adulthood carrying 3 heavy truths. Life was fragile. His father's death proved that. Love was unreliable. His mother's distance confirmed that. The world was noisy and shallow. His own sensitive heart whispered that. Instead of seeking company, he withdrew into solitude. Instead of chasing wealth, he chased wisdom. Instead of building a life in society, he built one in philosophy. But this isolation came at a cost. The more he thought, the more he saw, and the more he saw, the heavier everything became. To understand Schopenhauer, we must also understand his time. Europe was shifting rapidly. The Enlightenment had spread the light of reason and science. Industry was rising. Empires were expanding. Optimism was in the air. People believed in progress. Humanity was on the path to endless improvement, but Arthur didn't buy it. Where others saw hope, he saw illusion. Where others saw advancement, he saw deeper suffering dressed in new clothes. To him, technology might change, but the human heart remained restless, hungry, never satisfied. And in this restless heart, he saw the seed of all misery. Arthur studied philosophy with intensity. He absorbed the works of Plato, Kant, and the Upanishads of India. He was particularly drawn to Eastern wisdom, which spoke of life as suffering and liberation. As escape from endless desire, this resonated deeply with him, because he had lived it. He didn't just read philosophy, he felt it in his bones. While other philosophers sought to construct systems of rational optimism, Arthur did the opposite. He stared unflinchingly at suffering. He dared to declare what others avoided, that existence itself was problematic, and this would later become his hidden truth, that intelligence, far from liberating us, often shackles us. Because the more we understand, the more we recognize the futility of our endless striving. Imagine being that child again. Imagine standing in a house where your father is strict and your mother is distant. Imagine walking through life with a heart that feels too much, sees too much, questions too much. Most children laugh freely. You analyze. Most children play. You brood. Most children chase joy. You ask why joy never lasts. This was Arthur Schopenhauer, a boy who never felt at home in the world. A boy who would grow into a man carrying that same alienation into his philosophy. So when we later hear Schopenhauer say, the more intelligent a person is, the more they suffer, we must remember, it wasn't theory. It wasn't an abstract thought scribbled on paper. It was his life, his childhood, his loss, his loneliness, his relentless observation of human desire and disappointment. The hidden truth was not born in books, it was born in pain. And yet, it was this very pain that forged his path. His struggles, his conflicts, his failures, they weren't detours. They were the road itself. In Part 2, we will follow Schopenhauer into his battles with the world, his struggles with recognition, his bitterness toward society, and the moments that pushed him closer to the philosophy that would change everything. Because if Part 1 was about his beginnings, Part 2 is about his breaking points. When Schopenhauer entered the academic world, he believed he had finally found his arena, a place where intelligence would be celebrated, where truth would matter more than appearances, where the restless questions that had haunted him since childhood could finally find fertile ground. But he was wrong. Universities in his time were not temples of truth. They were battlegrounds of ego, politics, and tradition. Professors weren't always truth seekers, they were career builders, clinging to popularity and prestige. Schopenhauer's bluntness, his refusal to flatter, his unwillingness to play, social games, these quickly made him enemies. His lectures were scheduled at the same time as those of Hegel, the rising star of philosophy. Students flocked to Hegel with his grand, optimistic visions of progress. Meanwhile, Schopenhauer's lecture hall stood almost empty. Can you imagine it? A man burning with ideas, brimming with fire, ready to pour his soul into the world, speaking to rows of empty benches. Every echo in that empty room was a reminder, they don't want to hear you. Arthur despised Hegel. To him, Hegel represented everything wrong with philosophy, vague, pompous, and overly optimistic about human nature. He accused him of writing nonsense that people blindly admired because it sounded sophisticated. But deep inside, the real wound was this. People didn't want his truth. They wanted comfort. They wanted the illusion of progress. They wanted the sweet lie instead of the bitter reality. And so Schopenhauer's books went largely unnoticed. His masterpiece, The World as Will and Representation, published when he was only 30, received little attention. He had poured his heart, his vision, his pain into those pages, only to watch them gather dust. For decades, he lived in obscurity, bitterly convinced that the world was blind to real insight. This is where the hidden truth begins to reveal itself. Schopenhauer noticed something. The more clearly he saw life, the heavier it became. Intelligence gave him no comfort, only clarity, and clarity brought suffering. He wrote, "A man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills." What did he mean? That our choices are not as free as we believe. We are driven by an endless, blind force he called the will. We chase desires, thinking we choose them freely, but in reality, we are prisoners of cravings we never asked for. The intelligent man sees this. He knows every fulfilled desire quickly fades into boredom, and every unfulfilled desire burns with pain. Life swings like a pendulum between the two, but society doesn't want to hear this. Society celebrates desire, ambition, striving. And so, the more Arthur spoke, the lonelier he became. Even in love, Schopenhauer was out of sync with the world. He had few relationships, and those he did have were often strained, even cruel. His view of women, shaped partly by his difficult relationship with his mother, was harsh and controversial. He once pushed a seamstress down the stairs during an argument, a moment that haunted him for years. Behind the cruelty was fear, fear of intimacy, fear of disappointment, fear that love was just another disguise for the will, a trap pulling him deeper into suffering, and so It means that life is never still. We are either suffering because we don't have what we want, or we are restless because we already have it, and now it no longer excites us. This was the essence of his philosophy. Desire is endless, and intelligence makes us painfully aware of it. The animal lives simply. It feels hunger, it eats, and the hunger is gone. But man, armed with intelligence, multiplies his desires. He doesn't just want food, he wants status, security, recognition, power. And the more intelligent we are, the more layers of desire we invent. The more we invent, the more we suffer. Schopenhauer believed that behind everything in existence lies a blind, irrational force he called the will to life. It is not reason. It is not choice. It is not kindness or morality. It is a blind, ceaseless drive to survive, to reproduce, to continue. You see it in the plant that twists toward the sun. You see it in the lion that hunts the gazelle. You see it in the businessman who works day and night to climb higher, richer, stronger. This will is in all things, and it never stops. Schopenhauer said, "We are not free in the way we imagine. We believe we choose our goals, but really the will chooses for us. It drives us into hunger, into lust, into ambition, into struggle, and the cruelest part, it never lets us rest. Every fulfilled desire gives birth to a new one. Intelligence, then, is like a cruel light. It makes us aware of this endless cycle. We can no longer distract ourselves with simple illusions. We see the machinery of our own suffering. Imagine two people. The first is simple, not highly intelligent. He works, eats, sleeps, enjoys the small pleasures of life, and doesn't ask too many questions. He suffers, yes, but his mind doesn't torture him with endless what-ifs and why-nots. The second is deeply intelligent. His mind never stops. He questions everything. He is never satisfied because he sees through every illusion. When he eats, he wonders about meaning. When he loves, he wonders about permanence. When he succeeds, he wonders why success feels empty. Who is happier? The simple man, perhaps ignorant but more content. or the intelligent man, cursed with restless awareness. This is why Schopenhauer said, "The more intelligent a man is, the more he suffers." Schopenhauer lived during a time of rising optimism. The Enlightenment had promised that human reason would solve all problems. Science was advancing. Industry was booming. Philosophers like Hegel promised progress, unity, and the march of spirit through history. But Arthur laughed bitterly at this. To him, it was delusion. You can invent trains, factories, and governments, but you cannot invent a way to escape human craving. You can create wealth, but the wealthy will still hunger for more. You can write constitutions, but nations will still go to war. You can marry for love, but desire will still cool into boredom. Progress doesn't end suffering. It just changes its costume. Let's bring this into our world today. Think about the smartphone in your hand. It's a miracle of technology, instant information, endless entertainment, connection with anyone, anywhere. But what has it really given us? Yes, it solves some problems, but it also multiplies desire. We scroll endlessly, never satisfied. We compare ourselves constantly, never content. We chase likes, views, attention, endless digital forms of the same old will. And if we put the phone down, what creeps in? Boredom. So we pick it back up. The pendulum swings again. Pain, boredom, pain, boredom. Exactly as Schopenhauer predicted. Schopenhauer rejected the idea that happiness was life's goal. Happiness, he said, is not a lasting state. It is only the temporary silence of desire. You buy something new. You feel happy, but only until it becomes ordinary. You achieve a dream. You feel fulfilled. But soon another dream takes its place. You fall in love. You feel alive. But eventually, passion cools and longing returns. True, lasting happiness, it doesn't exist in the way we imagine. This sounds bleak, but wait. This realization is not meant to depress us. It's meant to free us. Because when we stop expecting life to deliver permanent happiness, we stop being disappointed. If life is suffering, if the will never rests, and if intelligence only sharpens our awareness of it, then where is the escape? Schopenhauer pointed to three paths. Art. In art, we step outside ourselves. Listening to music, watching a play, or looking at a painting, we forget our personal cravings. For a moment, we are lifted above desire. Compassion. When we stop obsessing over ourselves and instead recognize the suffering of others, our own suffering becomes lighter. Compassion dissolves the ego. Asceticism. The most radical path. Renouncing desires, embracing simplicity, even rejecting worldly pleasures. In this, he was inspired by Buddhism and Hinduism, the idea that peace comes from letting go. To Schopenhauer, these were the rare ways intelligence could be turned from a curse into a blessing. Picture a man walking through a bustling marketplace. People are laughing, bargaining, rushing, chasing. To them, life is busy, full, meaningful. But to him, every face reveals hunger. Hunger for wealth, hunger for love, hunger for recognition. And he knows hunger never ends. He wants to scream, "Stop! Don't you see? You will never arrive." But he stays silent because he knows they wouldn't listen. That man was Schopenhauer. And in many ways, that man is us. Whenever our intelligence awakens and we suddenly see the futility of our own chasing. Now, you might be wondering, what does this mean for me? Do I need to reject everything, run into the mountains, and live like a monk? Not necessarily. What Schopenhauer offers is not despair, but clarity. You will still desire, but you'll understand desire for what it is. You will still suffer, but you won't be shocked by suffering. You will still chase dreams, but you'll know dreams don't hold permanent salvation. This awareness can bring peace. Because instead of demanding perfection from life, you learn to meet it as it is. And here lies the hidden truth. It's not intelligence itself that is the curse. It's the illusion that intelligence will make us happy. When we expect knowledge to bring joy, we are crushed by disappointment. But when we use knowledge to see clearly, to live wisely, simply, compassionately, then intelligence becomes a gift. So the question isn't, why suffer because of intelligence? The question is, how will you use intelligence? To deepen your prison, or to unlock your freedom, because it's not enough to say life is suffering. The real question is, how do we live with it? How do we transform this heavy truth into strength, resilience, and meaning? That's where the motivational build-up begins. That's where despair turns into empowerment. That's where Schopenhauer's darkest insights become tools for light. Life will always test you. It will hand you pain when you least expect it. It will take away the things you thought you couldn't live without. It will show you the temporary nature of joy, and it will whisper in your ear, nothing lasts. Schopenhauer knew this, and for years it made him bitter, cynical, even hostile to the world. But here's where the transformation begins. Because when you stop resisting the truth of suffering, something extraordinary happens. You stop being a slave to it. Think of the last time you lost something important. Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was a dream job. Maybe it was simply the version of yourself you thought you would be by now. In those moments, your mind screamed, why me? Why now? Why this? And yet looking back, can you see how that pain changed you? How it stripped away illusions, burned away false hopes, and forced you to grow into someone stronger? Schopenhauer's insight was that suffering is not an enemy. It is the great sculptor of the soul. Without it, you remain soft, naive, blind. With it, you are carved, refined, awakened. The intelligent person suffers more because they see more, but this very suffering can become the foundation of a deeper, truer strength. What if, instead of cursing our restless minds, we began to honor them? What if we stopped saying, why can't I just be happy like everyone else? And instead said, maybe my pain is showing me something they can't see. The burden of intelligence can become a privilege if we learn how to carry it differently. Imagine standing in front of a storm. The winds are violent, the rain is unrelenting, and everything inside you screams to run, to hide, to beg for sunshine. But what happens when you stand still? When you face the storm, when you let the rain drench you instead of fighting it? Something changes. The fear lessens. You realize the storm is not here to destroy you, it is here to cleanse you. That's life. That's intelligence. That's suffering. You see, most people run endlessly from pain. They hide behind distractions, phones, entertainment, relationships, busyness. But the more intelligent you are, the less these distractions work. You see through them. You know they're shallow. And yes, this makes life harder. But it also opens the possibility for something rare, freedom. Because here's the secret. When you stop needing the world to be perfect, you become unshakable. When you stop expecting happiness to be permanent, you begin to appreciate moments of peace without clinging to them. When you stop fighting pain as if it is unfair, you discover the strength to endure it with dignity. Think of the strongest people you've ever admired. Were their lives free of pain? No, they were people who suffered deeply, but instead of breaking, they chose to use their pain as fuel. They turned wounds into wisdom, loneliness into clarity, loss into compassion. This is the transformation Schopenhauer points us toward. Yes, intelligence sees too much. It sees the emptiness of status, the fragility of love, the futility of endless desire. But this same intelligence can, and so do you see it? The same awareness that once tormented you now steadies you. The same mind that once pulled you into despair now shows you a deeper kind of peace. The same suffering that once threatened to drown you now teaches you how to breathe underwater. And suddenly you no longer wish to be less intelligent. You no longer envy the ignorant, because you realize they may laugh more easily, but their laughter is fragile. They may live more lightly, but their lightness is shallow. You, however, you have walked through the storm, you have faced the darkness, you have seen the futility of endless craving and still chosen to live. That is a strength no shallow joy can match. What Schopenhauer discovered, and what you are now discovering, is that the goal is not to escape suffering, but to live with it so gracefully that it no longer defines you, to turn every wound into insight, to turn every restless question into a deeper acceptance, to turn every shadow into a reminder of light. And once you reach that point, you look back at your old self, the self who wished to be less intelligent, less aware, less burdened, and you smile, because you finally see. You would never trade your clarity for ignorance again. You would never trade the depth of your soul for the shallowness of unthinking comfort. You would never want to be blind again. What once felt like a curse has become your crown, and you carry it not with bitterness, but with quiet dignity. When you reach the end of a journey, you often discover that the destination was not what you expected. You may have begun with the belief that intelligence was a curse, that overthinking was a prison, that awareness was a punishment. And perhaps for years, that belief weighed on you like a stone. You envied those who laughed easily, those who lived simply, those who seemed untouched by the sharp edges of reality. But now, having walked through Schopenhauer's hidden truth, you stand in a different place. You see that your very awareness, the thing you once despised, has become your freedom. Look at your own life for a moment. Think of the disappointments that once shattered you, the betrayals that once cut so deeply you thought you might never recover. Think of the nights you cried alone, the mornings you woke up with a heaviness in your chest, the conversations that left you questioning your worth. And yet you are still here. You carried it, you endured it, you thought intelligence made you weak, but it was the very thing that gave you the strength to survive. Ignorance cannot do this. Ignorance cannot carry such weight. It shatters easily because it is built on illusions. But you have faced reality without illusions, and you are still breathing. That is not a curse. That is power. This is why you no longer need to envy those who live lightly. Their lightness is not strength. It is merely the absence of awareness. But your weight, your depth, your scars, these are the proof that you have lived fully, seen clearly, and endured with dignity. You have touched the hidden truth and survived it. That makes you stronger than you realize. So the question now is not whether intelligence is a burden. The question is, what will you do with it? Will you use it to torment yourself, to pick apart every joy until nothing remains, to replay every mistake until your spirit breaks? Or will you use it to let go of illusions, to love without clinging, to live without demanding permanence, to find beauty even in fleeting moments? Imagine what your life would look like if you made that choice today. Imagine waking up tomorrow, and instead of wishing you were less thoughtful, less deep, less aware, you whispered, "This is my gift. I will carry it with pride." Imagine walking into your day with the strength of someone who no longer seeks eternal happiness, but instead embraces fleeting joy wherever it appears. Imagine how light your steps would feel, not because the world is easier, but because you are no longer fighting against it. This is the call Schopenhauer leaves us with, not to despair at the nature of life, but to awaken to it, to live honestly, without illusion, to suffer with dignity, to love without chains, to find peace not in escaping the storm, but in learning how to stand tall in the rain. And this is your call too. Your intelligence, your awareness, your restless questioning, it does not make you broken. It makes you alive. It makes you capable of depth, of wisdom, of compassion. It gives you the ability to see through the masks others wear, to understand pain when others ignore it, to notice beauty in places others overlook. Why would you ever trade that? Why would you ever wish to be blind again? The time has come for you to stop running from yourself. Stop cursing your mind. Stop envying those who seem unbothered. Your journey is different. Your gift is different. Your life will be deeper, heavier, yes, but also more meaningful. And meaning is worth more than shallow comfort. So carry your intelligence not as a burden, but as a crown. Let it remind you every day that you are capable of seeing clearly. Let it teach you that life is fleeting, and therefore every moment matters. Let it guide you to live not in despair, but in courage. Because courage is not pretending the pain isn't real. Courage is feeling the pain and choosing to live anyway. Think of all the people who have come before you, philosophers, writers, artists, dreamers. They were not happy in the shallow sense of the word. Many of them struggled, suffered, broke under the weight of their minds. But they also left behind wisdom, beauty, truth. They gave the world something that still lives centuries later. That is what it means to carry intelligence well, not to escape pain, but to transform it into something eternal. And now, it is your turn. What will you leave behind? How will you carry your gift? Will you let it drown you, or will you let it shape you into someone unbreakable? Do not wish to be less intelligent. Do not wish to be ignorant. Wish instead to be strong enough to carry your mind with grace. Wish instead to be brave enough to live with open eyes. Wish instead to turn your pain into wisdom, your struggle into strength, your wounds into reminders of beauty. When the day comes that you look back on your life, you will not envy those who laughed without understanding. You will not wish for a simpler mind. You will smile quietly because you will know that you lived fully, saw clearly, and carried your gift with dignity. And that is a life worth living, so take this truth with you. Let it live in your heart. Let it remind you, in your darkest nights, that you are not cursed, you are chosen. Chosen to see, chosen to feel, chosen to endure. And in that choosing lies your greatest power. And when you leave this world, may you leave not with regret, but with the calm of someone who lived honestly, courageously, deeply. Someone who no longer wished to be less intelligent because they understood the hidden truth. That to see clearly, to suffer honestly, and to live fully despite it all, that is the highest form of strength. Carry this truth with you, live it, and never again wish to be blind.